Venezuela sees the closing campaign rallies ahead of Sunday's regional and municipal elections. This Thursday saw the 9th North American Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., the first to be held since 2016, bringing together the U.S. and the Mexican presidents, as well as the Canadian Prime Minister. Ethiopian lawmakers appointed a committee to investigate alleged mass arrests carried out under the new wartime state of emergency as envoys from the African Union, United States, and the Kenyan president visit the country. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Felix Plasencia condemned the interference of the United States and the European Union in the country's internal affairs in the run-up to the regional and municipal elections of November 21st. The top diplomat reiterated that Washington refuses to recognize the government led by President Nicolás Maduro Moros, legitimately elected by the Venezuelan people. Plasencia also called on the Biden administration to schedule a dialogue with the Venezuelan government on the basis of mutual respect and between equals as sovereign states should behave. He also rejected the extension of sanctions imposed by the European Union against the government officials and the renewal of unilateral coercive measures contrary to international law, as well as statements attacking the country's electoral system ahead of Sunday's vote. The National Electoral Council of Venezuela stated that the schedule for the regional and municipal elections of November 21st has developed as planned in an environment of political stability. On the last day of the electoral campaign, the president of the Electoral Authority, Pedro Calzadilla, presented the International Observation Plan in the presence of at least 300 delegates from the different missions deployed throughout the national territory in order to accompany and observe Sunday's electoral process. Calzadilla also pointed out that the presence of the European Union represents recognition of the country's electoral authority and defined the process in the lead-up to the regional and municipal elections as a success and a major achievement. The president of the National Electoral Council also ruled out the possibility of fraud in the upcoming elections.
It is not impossible to fabricate or invent this. We are pleased to know that we, as the National Electoral Council, have contributed to this environment of political stability, of full political freedom. This is a country of liberties, a deeply democratic country.
The president of the Venezuelan Electoral Authority also confirmed the closing of electoral campaign activities.
The election campaign ends today at 11:59 or at 23:59. The election campaign closes today, on Thursday 18th, as established by law, on the eve of Sunday 21st. We must not forget to always say, state, and highlight that on Friday 26th, the elections of indigenous peoples will be held.
No hay que olvidar siempre decirla y pronunciarla y resaltarla. El viernes 26.
From today, there is electoral campaign ban. On Friday and Saturday, the electoral campaign is suspended. It is up to us to make a call to the organization with political purposes, to candidates, to refrain from disseminating messages that violate electoral regulations in order to reach Sunday in good conditions. A little more than 21 million Venezuelan men and women are registered in the electoral roll.
Venezuela's electoral schedule moves forward as planned ahead of the regional and municipal elections set to take place on Sunday. The elections for indigenous representatives in 8 of the nation states will take place on November 26. Our correspondent Brian Muir brings us details on the preparations ahead of Sunday's vote.
Over 356,000 troops were deployed as part of Phase 2 of Operation Republic, designed to guarantee the integrity of the electoral process and the safety of 14,262 voting centers, the candidates, the public, and around 300 international election observers from 55 countries.
The Bolivarian Armed Forces will work with the Electoral Commission to guarantee Article 5 of the National Electoral Law. It will guarantee the safety of the voters and guarantee the safekeeping of the electoral materials throughout the entire nation.
Together with the armed forces, 1,090 members of the Public Prosecutor's Office will oversee the electoral process. In all, over 500,000 people are involved in the management of the elections, including committee organizers, members of local electoral boards, and the technical and operational staff of the National Electoral Council.
This election on November 21st represents an important event in the life of the Republic. Elections represent the moment in which citizens congregate in all of the voting centers to guarantee the principle of popular sovereignty. It is an expression of republicanism which enables the people to decide on their collective destiny.
Election officials say that 90% of the scheduled tasks to guarantee smooth elections have already been carried out. Today, 18 tests will be conducted on the electronic voting system, and on Friday, over 30,000 electronic voting machines will be installed across the country.
We guarantee to the electorate that these machines are only operated with a system that was installed by the National Electoral Board and that they fulfill the requirement of registering votes. This is why this external auditing process is so important. It gives security to the voters.
International groups that have sent election observers to Venezuela to monitor Sunday's elections include the Carter Center, the Network of Intellectuals in Defense of Humanity, and the European Union, which is back for the first time since 2006 with a team of around 100 observers.
So far, there are no problems with any institution. Everything is developing as in any other electoral mission.
As the campaign season comes to a close, millions of Venezuelan citizens are looking forward to yet another opportunity to exercise their democratic right to vote. Brian Mir, Telesur, Caracas.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. On Thursday saw the 9th North American Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., the first to be held since 2016, bringing together the U.S. and the Mexican presidents, as well as the Canadian Prime Minister. The traditional trilateral summit, suspended under former U.S. President Donald Trump, returns at a time when the three leaders face deep differences on migration, climate, and trade. Biden met separately with his Mexican counterpart, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and the Canadian leader, Justin Trudeau, before the three sat down together. Biden has made some progress in repairing relations with its U.S. neighbors after the turbulent Trump years, but many significant strains remain and some new ones have emerged. Mexican authorities have been optimistic about the outcomes of the meeting, where they plan to negotiate agreements to improve conditions in the region and also the development of the southern Mexico and Central America in order to address the crisis forcing people to make dangerous journeys north. Prior to the trilateral meeting, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador met with the United States Vice President Kamala Harris. The Mexican president insisted on the importance of the immigration reform proposed by President Joe Biden to the U.S. Congress. López Obrador also recalled that both nations must help Central America fight the causes of poverty and inequality as part of measures to address migration. The Mexican president has repeatedly urged the U.S. to support programs like those he has implemented in Mexico to provide job opportunities to disadvantaged communities. Earlier in the day, the Mexican president met with the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, where they agreed to promote the fight against inequality based on three areas: the reconciliation with Indigenous peoples so as to put them in the center of public policies, the promotion of competitiveness in the region, and mechanisms for a fairer distribution of wealth. The two leaders also pointed out their intentions to move towards more inclusive economic integration so that vulnerable sectors benefit from greater trade cooperation. On Wednesday, Nicaragua's Supreme Court of Justice endorsed the declaration of the National Assembly urging President Daniel Ortega to denounce the Organization of American States for violating the sovereignty of the Central American nation.
The Supreme Court of Justice agrees, first, to endorse Declaration Number 5 of 2021 of the National Assembly of the Republic of Nicaragua, reaffirming the commitment of all Nicaraguan citizens to the principles on which our nation is based, in particular, those of national sovereignty, independence, and self-determination, as inalienable and fundamental rights, which belong absolutely and categorically to the people of Nicaragua. Second, to support the request of the National Assembly to the President of the Republic of Nicaragua, Comandante Daniel Ortega Saavedra, in his capacity as head of state and government, to denounce the OAS Charter in accordance with the provisions of Article 143 of the mentioned instrument.
Now we move on to other topics. Women who were victims of forced sterilizations between 1996 and the year 2000 in Peru under a program of former dictator Alberto Fujimori denounced new obstacles in the legal proceedings to seek compensation and recognition of the crimes committed against them after the sudden change of the judge leading the case. Judge Rafael Martinez Vargas was due to rule on whether or not to begin criminal proceedings against 7 of the accused, among them Fujimori, when the judiciary pulled him off the case in a sudden move and assigned Magistrate Lieutenant Ramirez Delgado in his place. Several non-governmental organizations and civil rights movements have denounced the move, in addition to the National Coordinator of Human Rights. The case, now including 1,317 plaintiffs, has been closed and reopened several times since 2002. The aim is to hold accountable several members of the Fujimori government for the sterilization without consent of thousands of poor and indigenous women. Now we move on to other topics. The latest figures published by the online research site Our World in Data show that 51.73% of the world's population has received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccination rates differ widely between different world regions. While some nations are already promoting the application of booster doses, others have vaccination rates well below the world average, with no end to the issue of vaccine inequality in sight. At the regional level, South America has an average partial vaccination rate of 70.53% and North America of 62.6%. By way of comparison, Spain has a rate of 81.6%, the United States of 67.38%, and South Africa of 27.02%. The countries with the highest vaccination rates in the Latin American region are Cuba, Chile, and Uruguay. And after a heated debate, German members of parliament passed a bill providing a legal framework to deploy new anti-COVID measures as the country sees a surge in cases. On Thursday, German leaders agreed tough new curbs on the unvaccinated, with plans to prevent them from accessing restaurants, sporting events, and cultural shows as the country battles to halt a record rise in COVID-19 infections. With new daily cases soaring to an all-time high of over 65,000, those who are not immunized are required to provide a negative test in order to use public transport or go to work. The new measures also include compulsory vaccination for healthcare workers and employees in nursing homes. Despite infections soaring in recent weeks, politicians have been accused of inaction and of focusing their attention instead of negotiations from Germany's next government following the September elections. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Ethiopian lawmakers appointed a committee to investigate alleged mass arrests carried out under the new wartime state of emergency. The move comes after allegations of arbitrary arrest of ethnic Tigrayans, as the Tigray People's Liberation Front and allied rebel groups continue their advance towards the capital Addis Ababa, sparking the announcement of emergency measures by the government. Meanwhile, top diplomats from the African Union and the United States returned to Ethiopia on Thursday as part of a ramp-up effort to broker a ceasefire in the country's north. The African Union's Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Olusegun Obasanjo, and his United States counterpart, Jeffrey Feldman, had already visited the country earlier in this month in a bid to facilitate a deal to end the grueling year-long war between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government and the TPLF. In a briefing with journalists, the spokesperson of Ethiopia's foreign ministry commented on the visits by mediators from the African Union, the United States, and the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Various forces. Actually, it was a kind of investigation. He was investigating situations. It's fact-finding type of mission. He went to Tigray, he came to Addis, he went to neighboring countries as well, went to the US. I think he's investigating things. He's talking to different partners, and at the end of the day, he'll come out with a proposal. And that proposal is not yet obvious. We'll see what this proposal will be. And the same thing holds true for Mr. Feldman. Well, Kenya is a neighboring country, and any neighboring country will have a concern about its neighbor. And out of the concern, the leader could have come here. But basically, his mission is also to talk about bilateral issues, about strengthening relationship between our two countries. And in fact, his concern is as well. Hopefully.
The government of Niger described 2 armed attacks near the border with Mali that killed 25 civilians and caused extensive material damage as acts of terrorism. The Interior Ministry reported that the attacks were perpetrated on Tuesday in the Bakarat camp and the capital of the commune of Terbaram, located respectively in the departments of Tilia and Tahua, by unidentified armed men. The Bakarat attack resulted in 25 dead, 1 injured, and 2 vehicles burned, while that in Terbaram saw infrastructure set on fire or ransacked, including the headquarters of the town hall, the integrated health center, and electrical installations, as well as 2 money transfer agencies. Both areas are located in northern Niger and near the Malian border, and have been the subject of recurrent attacks attributed to the terrorist groups operating in the northern Mali since 2017. And archaeologists in Morocco on Thursday unveiled what they say was the oldest jewelry in the world, a series of perforated seashells dating back as much as 150,000 years. The shells, assumed to have formed necklaces and bracelets, were discovered in the Bismoun cave near the coastal resort of Essaouira. According to a lead researcher, this discovery has enormous implications for the history of humanity. He also noted that Morocco was the site of some of the oldest Homo sapiens remains discovered to date. 5 individuals who died some 315,000 years ago and were discovered in 2017. The discovery came after archaeologists in Morocco in September identified clothes-making tools fashioned from bone dated back 120,000 years, the oldest ever found.
Today, we are presenting a find made in Bismoun cave 15 kilometers from the town of Essaouira. This discovery corresponds to 30 seashells, perforated and inked also, meaning that humans applied a red substance rich in iron oxide to these shells. The age of the shells is from 150,000 years. Currently, that means they are the oldest known in the world. The second implication is that this is the first time that humans use their bodies as a means to communicate among themselves or with members of other groups, more or less distant from their place of origin. We have the honor and the luck to present this discovery, an important and major find for humanity, also because it calls into question the history of humanity. Today we are going back 150,000 years, when the first civilizations left us a legacy found now by our archaeologists, and so today it's rich to history that we are finding.
brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.